Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into some really interesting material provided by a listener. It's excerpts from Life Lessons from Surah An-Nahl, a Quranic and Hadith scholarly commentary.
That's right. We're looking at Surah An-Nahl.
Which means the bee,
The
right?
B, yeah, or sometimes it's called the Blessings. It's got 128 verses, and it's really known for detailing God's many favors, his blessings on creation. It's quite comprehensive.
Okay, sounds fascinating. Before we get into the verses themselves, let's set the scene a bit. This was revealed in Mecca.
Yes, Mecca. And it was, well, a really tough time for Prophet Muhammad and the early Muslims. Lots of adversity, intense persecution.
How intense are we talking?
Very. This was revealed shortly before the Hijrah, the migration to Medina. It was during what's known as the Year of Sorrow.
Ah, right, when the Prophet lost his wife Khadijah and his uncle Abu Talib.
Exactly.
Well.
Losing that crucial support, facing constant opposition, it puts the surah in perspective. You can see how these verses would have been a source of immense spiritual comfort and strength.
Absolutely. It grounds the text, makes you think how relevant that feeling of needing strength still is, even if our challenges are different.
Precisely. That historical context isn't just history. It highlights the enduring power of these words for anyone facing hardship today.
So what are the main themes we'll be exploring in this deep dive? What should we be listening for?
Well, the absolute core is Tawhid, the oneness of God. It hammers this home and strongly refutes Shirk, associating partners with God.
Okay.
Then there are serious warnings about rejecting divine guidance and a real emphasis on accountability in the hereafter. You can't escape that.
Makes sense. What else?
It also lays out key moral and social principles, gives guidance on dawah, calling people to Islam, and really stresses the importance of patience, sabr, and trusting completely in Allah.
And the source we're using, Life Lessons from Surah An-Nahl, how does it approach this? It sounds pretty scholarly.
It is. It takes a thematic look at the verses. It synthesizes interpretations from really respected classical tafsir scholars, Mariful Quran, Tafhimul Quran, Ibn Kathir, Al-Jalain, At-Tabari, Asati, those kinds of sources.
So drawing on a deep tradition.
Definitely. And then it integrates relevant, authentic Hadith sayings of the Prophet from major collections like Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abi Dawood. The goal is to pull out practical life lessons.
Got it. A solid foundation for our discussion. All right, let's dive into those core principles. The first big section, verses 1 to 89, seems focused on faith and God's power. It starts pretty strongly, right? Verse 1.
Oh, yeah. Verses 1 and 2 hit hard right away. They declare that Allah's command is coming for sure. Whether that's Judgment Day or some other divine decree, the point is its certainty.
And it warns against trying to rush it.
Exactly. Don't try to hasten it. And immediately, it follows with glorifying Allah, placing him far above any partners people might invent. The very direct opening statement against polytheism.
Powerful. Then verses 20 to 22 talk about idols, the things people worshipped instead of God. What's the argument there?
It's pure logic, really. It points out that these idols create nothing. They're created things themselves. And they don't even know when they will be resurrected. It just highlights the complete irrationality of worshiping something powerless and unaware.
It seems so obvious when you put it like that.
Doesn't it? It really exposes the weakness in that kind of belief.
And this theme of rejecting multiple gods continues in verses 51 to 61. What stands out there?
Well, first, the explicit command, do not take two gods.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Yeah.
But it also critiques the pagan Arabs' own inconsistencies.
Like what?
Like how they'd attribute daughters to God, something they themselves disliked having. It points out the contradiction, the flawed thinking. And crucially, these verses touch on that very human tendency. Turning to God fervently when disaster strikes, but then forgetting him or reverting to shirk once things get comfortable again.
The fair weather friend phenomenon.
Sort of, yeah. The surah frames it as a kind of arrogance and ingratitude, a recurring human failing. We forget where the help actually came from.
It's easy to do, I suppose. And the surah uses parables to make the point even clearer, verses 75 and 76.
Yes, the parables are brilliant, like comparing a powerless owned slave with a free man who has resources, or a blind person versus someone who can see.
How does that relate?
It makes the abstract concept of Tawhid versus Shirk incredibly concrete. Just as there's a huge, undeniable difference between the slave and the master, or the blind and the sighted, there's an even greater difference between the one true God and powerless idols. It's logic grounded in everyday understanding.
It makes the irrationality of shirk seem self-evident.
Exactly. It appeals to reason through analogy.
So, pulling together this whole section on Tawhid and rejecting shirk, what are the big life lessons for us?
I'd say three main things. First, developing absolute reliance on Allah. Given his ultimate power and the certainty of his plan, where else would you place your trust?
Right.
Second, recognizing the utter futility of worshiping, or depending on anything else. The surah systematically dismantles the idea that idols or anything created has any real power.
Okay.
And third, avoiding hypocrisy in faith. That whole cycle of turning to God only in hardship. It's a warning. We need to aim for consistent, sincere belief in gratitude in good times and bad.
Consistency, that's key. Now, the surah shifts focus a bit, doesn't it? It points to signs of God's power in the natural world. Verses 3 through 8 start this off.
Yes, it moves from the abstract principle to the tangible evidence. Look around. It talks about the creation of the heavens and earth, the origin of humanity from a seemingly insignificant drop, yet we argue with the Creator.
That itself is a sign, maybe. Our ability to reason and argue.
Could be seen that way. And then it gets very practical. Benefits of cattle warmth from wool, food, even their beauty. And horses, mules, donkeys for transport and adornment. Things central to life then and still relevant in principle.
It covers the grand and the everyday.
Precisely. And it continues in verses 10 to 16. Rain bringing life, all the different crops and fruits, olives, dates, grapes, the cycles of night and day, sun, moon, stars, all subjected for our benefit.
It sounds like a guided tour of blessings.
It really does. Mountains stabilizing the earth, rivers, paths, landmarks for guidance, even the sea providing fish and allowing ships to travel. It's showing an ordered, purposeful creation designed for us.
And verse 18 adds that layer of humility, doesn't it?
Hugely important. If you tried to count Allah's blessings, you could never enumerate them. It's overwhelming. And despite our shortcomings, our ingratitude often, Allah is still forgiving, merciful, puts everything in perspective.
Then you get those really specific, almost miraculous examples in verses 66 to 69, the milk and the bees.
Ah, yes, these are powerful. Verse 66 describes milk coming from between digested food and blood in cattle, pure milk, pleasant to drink.
Yeah.
A marvel of biological transformation presented as a divine sign.
And the bees, that's where the surah gets its name.
Exactly. Verse 68 and 69 talk about Allah inspiring the bee, how it builds its home in mountains, trees, and human structures, how it eats from all fruits, follows the paths laid out by its Lord.
And produces honey.
Yes, honey of varying colors, described as having healing properties for people. It's a sign for those who reflect. And there's that beautiful hadith likening a believer to a bee.
Tell me about that.
The believer, like the bee, consumes only what is pure. Tape. Produces only what is pure. And when it lands on something, it doesn't break or damage it. It's a wonderful analogy for positive, pure conduct.
That really is profound. Taking from the good, producing good, causing no harm.
Exactly. Nature reflecting spiritual ideals.
And verse 78 connects it back to us, our own faculties.
Right. Allah brought us out from our mother's wombs knowing nothing, but then gave us hearing, sight, and heart's intellect, the capacity for understanding. These are the tools he gave us specifically to perceive and reflect on these signs.
So it's not just passive observation.
Not at all. These signs, these ayat, are there for reflection. The goal is gratitude, strengthening Tawhid, spiritual growth. There's an implication that appreciating and interacting responsibly with nature is part of spiritual development. Using the gifts to recognize the giver.
It's a very active engagement with the world around us. So looking at all these signs, creation, animals, plants, cosmos, bees, what are the core lessons? Let's summarize using that table idea from the source.
Okay, so reflecting on humanity's origin, 16.478, teaches humility and the responsibility to use our intellect for truth.
Got it. Cattle, 16.5 to 766.
Gratitude for sustenance, recognizing Allah's provision for our basic needs.
Rain and plants, 16.011.
Appreciation for essentials, contemplating nature's cycles.
The sun, moon, stars, 16.1216.
Recognizing cosmic order, divine guidance in all things.
Mountains, the earth, 16.15.
Awareness of stability, resources provided for our well-being.
And the bee, the honey, 16.68.
Inspiration for organization, productivity, purity, positive contribution, like the hadith we mentioned.
And finally, the sheer number of blessings.
16.12.
Continuous gratitude, deep humility, recognizing our dependence on Allah. It's all interconnected.
It really paints a picture of a world overflowing with signs for those willing to see them. Now, the surah also brings in accountability and the hereafter quite strongly. Verses 22, 34, 84, 89. What's the focus here?
It's the consequences. Verses 22-34 contrast the fate of the arrogant disbelievers' humiliation, hellfire, with the reward for the righteous believers. Paradise. It mentions the destruction of previous nations as a clear warning.
History as a lesson.
Absolutely. Then verses 84-89 describe Judgment Day vividly. Witnesses called from each nation, false gods abandoning their worshippers. It emphasizes the inescapable reality of being held accountable.
It drives home that cause and effect relationship between this life and the next.
Precisely. Your actions now determine your destiny later. It's not just abstract theology. It's presented as an unavoidable truth with profound implications for how we should live right now.
So the life lessons from this section on accountability. Number 1, accountability is inevitable. No escaping it. This should motivate righteous living.
Okay.
Number 2, clear consequences for arrogance and disbelief. A strong warning.
And number 3,
The beautiful promise of paradise for the righteous. That provides hope and reinforces the value of faith and good deeds. It gives life meaning and direction.
a clear contrast. Now, you mentioned earlier that human tendency, turning to God in hardship but forgetting him in ease. Verses 51-60 revisit this.
Yes, it's a recurring theme, a critique of inconsistent faith. People cry out to Allah sincerely when trouble hits, but when he removes the hardship, they often forget or associate others with him.
Why is this highlighted?
It contrasts this reactive faith with the ideal. Unwavering trust and consistent gratitude in all circumstances. The Surah reminds us that all blessings, big or small, easy times or hard, come from Allah alone. So our connection should be constant, not conditional. It's a call for mature, stable faith.
Right, not just an emergency contact, a constant relationship. Okay, let's shift to the second major part of the surah, focusing more on moral and ethical guidelines, starting with verse 90. This one sounds foundational.
It absolutely is. Verse 1690 is incredibly comprehensive, often recited in Friday sermons. It commands 3 things: justice, al-adl, good conduct or excellence, al-lisan, and generosity to relatives, ita al-qurba.
Justice, excellence, kinship, and it prohibits things, too.
Yes, 3 core prohibitions. Indecency or shameful acts, shaha, wickedness or wrongdoing, al-munkar, and oppression or rebellion, al-baqi. It's a complete moral compass in one verse.
And the commentary mentioned an incident with Uthman bin Mazun.
Right. The story goes that when the Prophet recited this verse to him, Uthman, who was already a pious man, was deeply struck by its comprehensiveness and divine wisdom. It highlights the verse's impact.
What about Ihsan? It means more than just good conduct.
Yes, Ihsan is deeper. It's about striving for excellence, sincerity, beauty in our actions, both in worship and dealings with others. The famous definition from the Prophet is, to worship Allah as if you see him, and if you cannot see him, then indeed he sees you. It's about the quality and intention.
Doing things beautifully and sincerely. So life lessons from this single verse.
Foundational principles for a just society, fairness, excellence, strong family ties, and a clear call to avoid moral corruption, indecency, evil, oppression. It covers personal and social ethics thoroughly.
Very powerful. Then verses 91-94 focus on fulfilling promises, covenants. Why the emphasis?
Integrity is paramount in Islam. These verses stress the absolute sanctity of oaths and agreements, both with Allah and with people. Breaking confirmed oaths is strongly condemned, especially if it's done deceitfully, maybe because you think you're stronger or can get away with it.
So no manipulation.
None. And the reminder that Allah knows what you do underscores that accountability. Your word must be your bond.
Key lessons there seem to be integrity, trustworthiness, the sacredness of promises, and avoiding deception at all costs.
Exactly. Essential for building trust in any relationship or society.
Now, verses 95-99 touch on something unique, the preservation of the Quran. How is this presented?
It's presented as a divine guarantee. Verse 99 implicitly, and other verses like 15.9, explicitly state that Allah himself has promised to protect the Quran from corruption.
And how did that happen practically?
Through 2 main channels simultaneously. Widespread oral memorization, hifz, passed down generation to generation in an unbroken chain, and meticulous written documentation from the very beginning. This dual method is seen as unique among scriptures.
Which reinforces its authority for believers.
Absolutely. It gives Muslims immense confidence in the text's authenticity and divine origin. It's seen as a living miracle.
What are the life lessons from knowing the Quran is divinely protected?
Well, firstly, trust in God's promise and power. Secondly, the responsibility to preserve, learn, and transmit it accurately ourselves. And thirdly, a warning against trying to distort or misinterpret God's word, upholding its integrity.
Makes sense. The next verses, 99 and 100, talk about seeking refuge from Satan. What's the guidance here?
It's practical spiritual advice. Specifically, before reciting of the Quran, seek refuge in Allah from Satan. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Now, it's like putting up a spiritual shield, purifying intention.
And it clarifies Satan's power.
Yes. Importantly, it says Satan has no real authority over those who truly believe and trust in Allah. His influence is limited to those who choose to follow him, who willingly take him as a patron and associate partners with God.
So it emphasizes our own choice and reliance on God.
Exactly. It's empowering. Satan can tempt, but he can't compel true believers who rely on Allah.
Lessons being constant remembrance of Allah, actively seeking his protection, understanding Satan's limited influence and tactics, and the power of our own free will and trust in God.
Well put.
Then, verses 116 to 119 issue a strong warning about what exactly? Making things lawful or unlawful?
Yes, declaring things halal, lawful, or haram, forbidden, based on your own whims or opinions without divine authority. It's described as inventing falsehood against Allah.
And this includes religious innovation, bid'ah.
Yes, that's how it's traditionally understood.
Yeah.
Introducing new matters into the religion as if they are part of it, without basis in the Quran or authentic Sunnah. The commentary mentions a hadith condemning innovations. The idea is that Islam is complete, perfected by God, and shouldn't be altered by human invention.
So stick to the revealed sources.
Precisely. Adhere to divine law, avoid bid'ah, and always rely on knowledge from authentic sources. Don't speak about religion without knowledge.
Got it. Then the surah highlights Prophet Abraham, in verses 120 to 124. Why him specifically?
Ibrahim is presented as the ultimate role model of pure monotheism. Verse 120 calls him an ummah, a nation, or a model community in himself. He embodied sincerity, gratitude, complete submission to Allah, rejecting idolatry entirely.
And Muslims are told to follow his path.
Yes, follow the religion of Ibrahim, the Hanif, the one who turned away from falsehood towards the truth. He represents the primordial, pure faith Muslims aspire to.
So the lessons from Ibrahim are about emulating that pure monotheism, sincerity, submission, and unwavering devotion.
Right, exactly. He's the archetype of faith in action.
Okay, finally, the surah concludes with guidance on dawah, calling to Allah, and patience in verses 125 to 128. What methods are prescribed?
Verse 125 outlines 3 key approaches. First, invite with wisdom. This means deep understanding, clarity, using proofs, being gentle.
Okay.
Second, with good, beautiful preaching or counsel. Mawija hazana. This is about touching the heart, compassion reminders, constructive advice.
And the third?
Debate or argue in the best manner. Jadal bilati hiya hasan. If discussion is needed, use rational arguments, be polite, focus on truth, avoid antagonism. It's about the how as much as the what.
A very ethical approach to dialogue, and patience comes in.
Crucially, verses 126-127 address dealing with hostility. If you're retaliating, do so only in proportion to the harm done. But patience, sabr, is better. And know that your ability to be patient comes only from Allah's help.
So rely on him even for patience itself.
Yes, there's a divine gift you seek.
So the final life lessons here are about effective, ethical communication, resilience and forbearance when facing opposition, and ultimately deep reliance on Allah for support in all things, even in the struggle to be patient.
That sums it up well. Surah An-Nahl, as we've discussed, really weaves together so many vital aspects of faith and life. It's incredibly rich.
It really feels like more than just historical text. It's a source of strength, solace, and very practical guidance for living a principled life.
Absolutely. And notice how it connects everything belief in God, reflecting on his creation, behaving ethically, understanding accountability. It's a holistic framework.
It truly is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. We've talked about these principles revealed centuries ago. How might they offer real, enduring solutions to the challenges we face today in our own lives and communities?
Yeah, and maybe consider in what specific ways could consciously integrating these lessons from Surah An-Nahl, lessons about gratitude, justice, patience, reliance on God, lead you towards a more purposeful, meaningful life.
Definitely food for thought. We really encourage you to explore Surah An-Nahl further for yourself. There's so much more depth there.